Yes, we're going to change gears entirely. We have Park the Six Nations, and we're going to take a look all the way to the other side of the world, where exciting return of rugby in Australia and New Zealand is upon us.
That's
Super
right.
Rugby, as a new format this year, Super Rugby AU and Aotearoa are going to be... Oh, I butchered that, didn't I? Aotearoa. They're both going to be taking place over the coming weeks. Super Rugby AU gets started this week.
Yes.
Aotearoa next week, but we're going to take a look at both competitions, just looking ahead to them, and the new format this year with a couple of new law changes, and it's always the most exciting, maybe Champions Cup rivals it, but the most exciting club competition in the world, or one of, for sure.
Fantastic, for sure.
We're starting with the Super Rugby AU. What's the story here is that they're each going to play a domestic season, Australia and New Zealand, and then there's going to be a combined competition once those competitions are won, which I think is a great format.
That's perfect.
It gets the best out of both. I think it's great for Australian rugby to have an internal competition.
Well, we saw it last year where it was forced upon them with COVID, but they actually got into it. The Super Rugby AU last year, the crowds were starting to creep up in terms of the attendances.
There were local rivalries, and there were true dynamics, and the best players emerged, and there was confidence gained.
An intrigue and confidence that can only be gained from playing each other. It can't be gained by being whooped by Kiwi teams all the time.
Indeed, but it puts them in a better position to compete when they're playing the Kiwi teams.
Yeah, no, it does.
It's a great opportunity for them to build some confidence going into it.
Build some competence.
build some competence and some confidence. But they've got a very young player base at the moment, and they're trying to blood new guys. So getting them more competitive game time before they face the big bad Kiwi teams is no bad thing at all.
Yeah, and there's some domestic silverware which has its own kind of chips in terms of having some stakes to it as well. It's good. It's definitely been a success so far, and I'm glad to see it return this year.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen it, it's a fantastic watch. They play great offensive rugby. There's wonderful competitive games played at a breakneck speed. It's by far the most easy on the eye version of club footy that we get is Australian and Kiwi Super Rugby.
Yeah.
And starting with AU, for those uninitiated, the competition features 5 teams.
Yeah.
We got the Queensland Reds, the ACT Brumbies, the New South Wales Waratahs, and the Western Force.
That's right.
Each representing
and the Rebels as well.
Melbourne Rebels.
Rebels.
I forgot to mention the Melbourne Rebels. They're in there as well.
Our favourite team.
The competition's going to go on for 10 rounds. Each side's going to play their opponent home and away, and have a couple of bye weeks in there as well, on account of the odd number teamness of it all.
Two games per weekend,
And then after that season, at the end of the season, the competitions, there's going to be a semi-final and a final in Super Rugby AU, so just the bottom of the log team is going to miss out on playoff postseason football.
Yeah.
And then all 5 sides will join the Trans-Tasman competition with the Kiwi sides. There was talk of maybe doing like a little, maybe the top 8, maybe the top 6, something along those lines. But for this season, it's going to be all teams involved in the Trans-Tasman competition later in the year, which is no bad thing. And then there's a semi-final and a final that'll end it. And just to cover rule changes is the other thing, because this is a big dynamic going on in Super Rugby this year.
Well, certainly last year Super Rugby AU was pretty innovative in bringing in was it the 50-22 and the 22-50 rule, and the goal line dropout all came in last season, and they were doing a thing. The naysayers were saying this was just kind of lifted from rugby league. I am not one of the naysayers. I actually think it's a grand thing. The goal line dropout is neither here nor there, but I love the idea of the 50-22 and the 22-50, because I think it incentivizes positive kicks, as in like it'll get your spiral back in because you have to go for distance and grass to get reward for it. But it also kind of pulls the wingers back from the solid defensive line. You can't really have 13 in a line anymore because you're not covering all that space. And if the 50-22 is in effect, you can be facing down on a big chunky yardage and possession. If the kicking team retains the ball in those circumstances, it makes for exciting opportunities with boot, and probably less aimless kicking, which is obviously something that we're not in favour of, and we've had a few seasons where it's been inflicted upon us. So I'm all for those rules.
Likewise, there's another cute rule with the free kicks off the restart. If you don't kick your kick 10, or if you kick it out on the full, or if you kick it dead, instead of just being a scrum on halfway, it's actually a free kick.
So you have the option of a scrum.
A la sevens.
Yeah.
Well, you have the option of a tap. You have the option to
yeah.
run it up and tap it, and it potentially increases speedy play, and you might see a bit of that in Super Rugby AU. In addition, the golden point rule for drawn games was introduced last year. I don't know about not having draws. I think draws are fine, but it's fine to go to extra time as well if you want. I don't really have an opinion on that. But obviously you need overtime for knockout games.
Yes.
And this is where I think this is very exciting, because they're finally starting to get it right, as opposed to any ideas about a drop goal competition or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
Which is facilitated by a silly copied from football extra time, where you have to play out the whole of extra time. I much prefer the NFL version, where it's like, the game's over, we got to decide it, next score is going to win. And that's what was introduced last year, but it's actually been tweaked to be even better for this year. The drawn match is now going to be decided by a golden try.
Lovely.
The first try scored in a 10-minute extra time with 2 5-minute halves will win the match for the team. A penalty or drop goal does count for points towards the match score, but the game will continue until either a try is scored or the 10-minute period expires. And that's interesting. And they say it's in place to encourage attacking play in overtime, which makes all the sense in the world. But also, just a try is sort of a definitive way to end the game. It does bring into question the one anomalous point that you made when I was bringing this up as an idea of my own without realising that it had already gone ahead and done it.
What happens if you're 9 points down and you score a try?
Yeah, it's like the Quidditch scenario.
Yeah, indeed. You caught the snitch and the game's over, but you're 400 points behind. So
it doesn't get you enough. So I wonder. It's a curiosity.
Is there a prerogative of it's your prerogative? You score the
maybe
try. Maybe
is it a 10-point try? Is it just a game-winning try?
Game-winning try. Yeah, that scrubs out the 3-pointers. You could do it that way. I don't know. Yeah, no, that is the one scenario. It's a very unlikely scenario. So, draws are uncommon in rugby anyway.
You're talking about getting a draw and kicking 3 quick 3-pointers in 6 minutes, and then conceding a try, and then what happens? I don't know.
I'll take things that'll rarely happen, but I won't say never to that.
It's interesting to see them go on the NFL route of a draw being a regular season draw being bringing up extra time. That's definitely interesting. I don't hate draws usually because they're so rare in rugby anyway. When they happen, I'm like, ooh, draw. But
it can be exciting. Draws are lovely.
Extra time brings in excitement as well, so I have no hatred for that. Listen, ahead of the competition, we're going to just take a look at each of the teams in the competition, in a bit of detail. We're going to start with the Brumbies, who are the champions.
That's right, and perpetually the strongest side and standout performers in Aussie rugby. They tend to punch above their weight. They don't play flamboyant rugby very much. They kind of are the nuts and bolts, most fundamental team in Australia, and that tends to be good enough because there's a lot of loosey-goosey stuff you see from other teams. They
definitely tend to be the best coach. They do sometimes bring some razzle-dazzle. They brought a bit last year in their championship season. But they still have that
always a mauling force,
ferocious attacking maul, and if pre-season's anything to go by, they're going to continue in that vein. But they're a very well coached team by Dan McKellar. They've got some real quality in there. Nick White at scrum half guides them quite nicely. Noah Lolosio, the young guy who came in the final last year, he's a great exciting player. Alatoa, the captain from Tighthead, gives you an indication of the mean mindset,
the nature of the team. Yes.
Pete Samu, also quality player. Tom Banks at fullback,
real standout. Tom Wright as well, who made his debut in the Tri-Nations just gone, is fantastic. Against the All Blacks, looks a really good player, to be honest, and he's a winger. So
he's actually out, Tom Wright, for the first few weeks.
I was going to say, he's going to be missing for the start of the season, but he'll be coming back in. And there's a lot of quality there, and there tends to be, as we said, a little bit more nous than most of the other teams in the competition. Probably a little bit more heft and physicality a lot of the time.
A bit more guts in key moments.
And clutch, and a bit more. Generally, they maintain their discipline pretty well compared to every other team in this tournament. Usually in Super Rugby, Aussie teams tend to get a little bit ill-disciplined when things get loose and things go against them. The Brumbies are an altogether tighter force, and they're worthy champions going into this, and they'll probably be favourites.
And they are the Canberra-based team that sticks in the mud against the usual Australian sporting rivalry of Queensland against New South Wales.
That's right.
The ACT Brumbies, very much the big dogs in Australian Super Rugby in recent seasons.
Yeah.
But there is a challenge challenge to that crown, a real challenge being
That's
mounted
right.
at the moment by Brad Thorne's Queensland Reds.
Yeah.
And they're an exciting team. They've been up and coming now for the last year.
Well, Brad Thorne came in a few years ago and cleaned house and kind of axed a lot of people. Controversially got rid of Quade Cooper and a few others as well. He cleaned house Carmichael Hunt, and it's kind of cleaned house and started again from the ground up. And it's only really recently that we're starting to see that kind of that real new seismic change in their ethos and outlook and personnel start to pay dividends. They're starting to get more cohesive.
No, they're well drilled, and they build off strong defense, discipline, set piece, and power, and then launching attacks from there. James O'Connor's just been named captain. He's had a renaissance. He's flipped Brad Thorne from being a skeptic all the way into being his strongest believer. Just with great work rate and great hustle. They've also got, in terms of folks to watch out for, Taniela Tupou at tight head is
arguably the best tight head in the world right now. Certainly based on his Tri Nations showing, a force to be reckoned with at international level. This is club footy in Australia. He should be dominating a lot of scrummages, you'd expect.
He's awesome and dynamic, and in Super Rugby he really gets to show off all his skills. Explosive runner of the ball, wonderful offloader of the ball for a big man, and a dynamic scrummager. He's a clutch player who makes a huge amount of plays for this team, and just very much, as tight heads rarely go on the excitement books, but this guy does. He's one of the most exciting players in the whole comp.
One of the players to watch. But then also the midfield, the fledgling midfield from Australia, Hunter Paisami and Jordan Pataya. That's exciting too. There's scope for some great offloads. Pataya, a super exciting player.
The
really lovely
incumbent Wallaby midfield is O'Connor, Paisami and Pataya.
And there they are for the Queensland Reds. So there's potential for some lovely attacking footy, as well as some kind of fundamental stuff in set piece with Taniela Tupou. They're creeping towards a completed package, and it's definitely they'll be targeting.
They made
the
final last year. The next step is to go and win this competition, and then they'll get the opportunity at season's end to mix it with the Kiwi sides and see where they really are, which is just very, very exciting. They're very much. They would be a lot of people's favourites to win the competition. Brumbies will have a thing or two to say about it. But they seem to be an up and coming force with a huge amount of talent, some top quality players, and potentially the best side in it.
We'll see. And then that moves us on to the Waratahs. Now traditionally they've been kind of the biggest, baddest team in Aussie sports, just coming out of Queensland and stuff, and certainly you hear it a few times.
New South Wales, they're Queensland rivals, but
Queensland rivals and New South Wales, but like it was something we noted even with Wallaby commentary, that the Waratahs always seem to be the commentators' favourite team. Even like if the Western Force score a try, it's bad defending, whereas if the Waratahs score a try on the Western Force, it's great attack.
Whenever you get Aussie coverage of the Waratahs, it's very much told from their point of view. They are the protagonists,
indeed,
of the
as opposed to the villains of the piece
of Super Rugby a lot of the time. But this iteration of the Taz under Rob Penny has yet to take off, and they're losing. They've been hemorrhaging talent in recent seasons. Bernard Foley gone to Japan, Michael Hooper gone to Japan, Curly Beale gone to Racing. That's a lot of the spine of what that team was.
They finished last season.
Izzy Folau obviously nowhere to be
seen.
Well,
obviously he was a huge asset for them. It was Folau and Beale was really where their offense was kind of humming when they were at their best a few seasons ago. That has gone by the wayside. They finished 4th in the competition last year. They have Will Harrison at out half, who looks an awful lot like Foley from a zoomed out kind of range in terms of just his gait and his physique, but he's probably not quite the player even Foley was, and I'm not convinced Foley was an elite out half at any point either. I think he was quite a good facilitator.
He had some good form for a few years, but if they're going to compete, they're going to need young guys to step up and start really, really performing. And last year that was the story of Super Rugby AU.
It
was young guys who you hadn't necessarily seen if you were outside Australian rugby, bursting onto the scene and performing really well, and coming into a Wallaby side and looking very, very competent at test level, and if they can get another crop in this team coming through, that would be massive for Australian rugby, giving them a bit of depth and a bit of competition. They're captained by the little scrummy Jake Gordon,
who was quite impressive in his cameos for Australia as well, wasn't he? He was coming in off the bench for New White, doing a decent job of closing some games out. That's good experience. They also have some Jack attack, Jack Dempsey and Jack Maddox, isn't it? The two kind of more experienced guys that they have there. They're kind of a bit lighter on Wallaby test experience than you would have seen from Waratahs teams in years gone by. They're definitely going to be bolstered by young guys. They're going to if the season's going to go well for them, you're going to have to see a few breakout stars who we don't quite know yet seize their jerseys and really do a good job.
But don't sleep on Dempsey and Maddox either. Maddox and Dempsey, about a few years ago, maybe the 2018 season or somewhere along those lines, had explosively powerful seasons. Dempsey in particular was playing as
skittling folks with the ball. His ball carrying was ferocious.
Beating the All Blacks nearly by himself, and you know, he looked like the sky was the limit for him as far as being one of the world's elite back rowers. He struggled with injury, but if he can get any kind of form going, he could carry this Waratahs team to some success. But yeah, like I say, fourth last year, a lot of young guys in the team. Rob Penny, we've seen up close and personal in charge of Munster, and don't know if he's all that.
No, it's tough to blame him for the Munster one though, because I think that was more of a culture clash than anything else. He truly won, yeah. But it's early days in terms of his tenure there. They'll hope to do better than fourth this year for a team that are used to kind of winning things. It's been a long kind of I guess transition period is what you generously call it. As I say, look out for some young lads for the Waratahs because they'll need to perform.
And they do at their very best, like all Aussie teams, play a quick, high-tempo offensive brand, so they should be at the very least fun to watch.
That's exactly it, yeah.
And the same could be said for the Rebels. The Melbourne Rebels have been building. They're the next team in our list. Fourth team in our list. Their head coach Dave Wessel's now been in charge since 2017, and they've been getting more competitive.
The turning point, considering they had been in the years previous to that just perpetual get hammered guys, totally non-factor in Super Rugby as it was. Yeah, they've managed to they really benefited from the Western Force being axed, and they managed to grab a few of those players, but they bolstered their squad over the last few years and have become quite a competent team.
Yeah, they were beneficiaries of the Force axing indeed. And since then, they have been going sort of from strength to strength, just improving year on year.
Yeah.
Their captain Dane Hillett-Petty is a fine footballer,
always
player.
Has been. Yeah.
He's going to be keen to get back into Dave Rennie's mind and into the fighting once again for the starting berth in the Wallabies. He's been kind of in and out over the last couple of years.
That's right. Yeah.
But he's a quality player. They've also got little Frank Lamani at scrummy. He's the Fiji starter.
Fiji starting scrum half. That's a useful asset, all right, for good quick ball.
Yeah. The key man for me on whom this team might hinge to look out for is EC Naisarani, because he's this Fijian import who's a Wallaby qualified test Wallaby who was just on the outside last year, and he actually put up class performances in the two Australia select teams that played Argentina.
Yes.
He actually managed to cause that Argentine defence more problems than arguably the All Blacks and Australia did in the Tri-Nations. He was running through them, he was scoring tries. He probably has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He's 25 now and he's not getting the test look in.
Yeah.
And I feel like his form could go one of two ways. He could explode now. This could be his year. He's kind of peaking physically or getting close to that stage. Yeah. He could explode and force his way in and then bring the Rebels up with him.
Potentially.
Or he could sort of plateau and stay out of the mix, and it could be a frustrating year for him. And I'm very curious to see what he does. I feel like his form might be a litmus test for how this team goes.
Maybe so.
Although they do have other class players.
Some other players. I've seen Reece Hodge, Marika Korobetti, Matt Tamua. These are good, experienced international caliber players. That'll be vital for them in terms of how their season goes.
Yeah, curious to see if they put Reece Hodge at 10. They could, like a Dave Rennie directive could come down from a Wallaby point of view.
Yeah.
They do have James O'Connor, but Hodge was very much their backup 10 last year. So I'd be curious to see if they do that.
Tamua as well.
Yeah, they have options.
Options is what they have, but they have good quality players, and they've been building a pretty decent team over the last few years. So watch out for the Rebels. And then finally, our favourite Wallaby team, or a favourite Australian team. The Western Force, the only team representing that whole hemisphere of Australia, which is why it was such a travesty to see them ousted from Super Rugby, and it's great. Conversely, it's just great to see them back.
It's the best silver lining from the pandemic, full stop.
Is
that we get the Western Force back. They were always my team when I started watching Super Rugby. before they were axed cruelly. I always loved them. Matt Hodgson, the stalwart captain, who has now become director of rugby and seems to be making play after play even after retirement.
Yes.
Somehow he's still the every play man because he's brought in a rake load of new talent in the off season. They've been on a recruiting frenzy.
Well, to be honest, that is right and proper because they were in last season and they were comprehensively outmatched.
Well, they had to take part on short notice.
Yeah, that's right.
To make the competition happen.
Yeah.
And they had just a bunch of players who were playing in this rival league with different rules and 8-point tries.
Yeah.
And they had to come in and play these Super Rugby teams. It was definitely a culture shock, and they went. I think they were swept. They swept. They were swept. They didn't win a game. So that obviously needed to change. They didn't get rid of the coach, Tim Sampson. He's still there.
Yeah.
But now he has a decent squad to work with. They brought in, obviously, our national interest, Irish fullback Rob Kearney.
Yeah. Most decorated man in Irish rugby, so he is.
Yes.
All the trophies.
Yes. A rare thing, an Irishman with
Indeed.
stacked trophy cabinet. Rob Kearney. Class fullback on his day, obviously getting on now, but I'm excited to see how he goes. He is named in the starting team
for this weekend.
At the very least, he should be solidity at the back. He should deal with the kicking
his
game.
high ball, he's an expert under the high ball. We've genuinely missed him. Ireland have got suddenly ropey without him, where he had been. He'd facilitated Ireland having 13 men in the defensive line because he covered so much space in the back line. So a veteran fullback is a useful acquisition for them. But he's not the only one.
No.
They've also got Argentinian, a quartet of Argentinians. They have Thomas Cabelli, quick little scrummy that he is, Thomas Lezana, Santiago Medrano, and Domingo Miotti.
Yes.
All internationals, all coming in and bolstering the force. And just that list alone, as well as like former All Black duo Richard Kahui and Jeremy Thrush.
Yeah, they were there last season.
But
they've also got Tavita Kurandrani coming into the team.
Coming in. Tom Robertson as well on board. Inside centre to Carl Godwin. Yeah, there's a lot more quality in just on the team sheet than there was last year. That was a big concern going into week 1, into game 1 last year, where we were like, really hope the Force go well. They do have like the best fans in Australian rugby by far. Like the noise out of their stadium, just the atmosphere, is fantastic. But you were looking at the team last year and going like, wait, who? What? How's this going to? Are they?
They were caught cold. They were caught cold by the fact that they had to compete on short notice. But I'm expecting big things. I think we all are.
Yeah,
they've got like this. Yeah, they've got Godwin and Kurandrani in the centre starting. John O'Lance at 10 is going to have a bit of work to do. I'm surprised not to see Miotti in there straight away, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
John O'Lance was in there last year and didn't do much. But Lozano straight in the back row, Medrano straight in a tight head, Thrush still in there. There's actually a decent amount of quality in this team, so I'm excited to see.
Hopefully they'll be able to mix it with the guys now this time, as opposed to what we're hoping for is no sweep this year. We're hoping for progress from the Force and maybe a big scalp or two along the way.
100%. Listen, as far as the competition itself is concerned and what's likely to happen, the overall betting odds make the Brumbies favourites.
Champions Brumbies,
The Reds not too far behind them, almost a dead heat between those two.
Well, it's evens for the Brumbies and 9-5 for the Reds. So it's pretty close.
Almost a dead heat. Then you have way out Waratahs 7-1, Western Force and Rebels both at 10-1. Your best bet there might be the
Western Force.
I know. Your best bet might be the Reds. Force could be a decent bet.
Force,
for me, the Taz is a bad bet.
Yeah.
Because they're in third on reputation.
Yeah.
They finished 4th last year behind the Rebels. Western Force have imported loads of players. They haven't. They've lost players. Their captain, in fact. Yeah. So I don't see the Waratahs as a real threat.
Yeah.
Whereas the Force, if it all clicks for the Force, they could be in there. And likewise the Rebels, if Naisarani and the boys can just hit top
certainly
form.
10-1 is decent odds in a 5-horse race. So there's definitely value bets to be made. Brumbies at evens is the favourite for the reason, for a good reason. We've been optimistic about a lot of Australian teams, only for the Brumbies to be the last one standing, and that's been true in Super Rugby for the last few years.
Consistent good hustle out of them, and they are favourites for a reason, but that doesn't make them a good value bet. But
no,
they're up there, top team. You got to hand it to them. The round 1 gets away. When you're watching this video, it'll probably be a matter of hours.
Indeed.
But it gets away this Friday morning our time, Friday evening, obviously local time out in Australia. The Reds play the Waratahs as the opening game. Queensland versus New South Wales.
Big rivalry.
That's going to be in Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. 9:45 in the morning in our time, UK time, and 6:45 local time in the evening. That'll be followed immediately by the Force and the Brumbies, Western Force,
also
up
a
against
Friday night game.
the champion Brumbies. That's going to be 11 o'clock local time and 7 o'clock at local time PM and 11 a.m. over here.
11 a.m. over here. Yeah,
that's good. Double header of rugby on Friday
good
morning.
To see it. And that'll be at HBV Park in Perth. Good to see rugby back in Perth.
Great to see rugby back in Perth. Yeah, absolutely. The only shame of it is the broadcasting issues that we're having over here. I mean, we're going to have to just go hunting.
Indeed,
with VPNs or other such.
Yeah, ordinarily Sky Sports have this rugby, but they haven't gone in. As of when we're filming this week, no one has bought the rights to Super Rugby AU.
Rights up for grabs. Although there is positive news in broadcasting domestically. I believe they've got a new broadcaster. I believe it might even be free to air.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check that, but that's great locally if they've
for
done that.
the Aussie fans. It's good to get the eyeballs on because it's been a concern.
They need to big up rugby. They need people watching
and them having a domestic competition where there's guaranteed to be an Australian winner makes all the difference to that. Like it just makes a difference. There's competitive games, there's local rivalries, there's good offensive rugby, and it's just great. And then the prospect of a postseason against the Kiwis keeps that Tasman element alive. I think the new format's great, and looking forward to an exciting competition.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to give it a like, share with your friends, and leave a comment down below as well. We really do want to hear your thoughts.